Hello, welcome everyone. Welcome to the chat show where we talk about empathy, employment, and innovation. In today's show, our guest is Monica Kang. She's been the executive coach, working with leaders, and maybe I will have her introduce herself and tell us a little bit about. So, Monica, welcome to the show, and please tell us a little bit about you and your work in the area of leadership development.
Hi, thank you, Nish, for having me. Honored to be here and great to meet everyone. My name is Monica. I'm the founder and CEO of InnovatorsBox. And as Nish says, one of the things that we do is coaching. But the backbone of what we do is really rethinking creativity in the workplace. What that means is how you build your culture, how you lead, and how you show up to work, because creativity and innovation is something that we often say we need, and yet so little is actually understood. And so I usually help people and teams and leaders rethink about what that means, so that way they show up their full selves, whether it's with empathy, curiosity, or creativity, and so that we not just think about how we do what we do, but really holistically. And so we do a lot of culture and leadership development through the workshops, speaking, coaching, and products and card games we provide, but really taking that holistic lens of speaking and creativity.
Great. So you mentioned curiosity, and I'm curious to know how you really bring in curiosity and how you relate curiosity with leadership for innovation. When we are talking about innovation now during COVID and post-COVID, how important that innovation is going to play in a professional world. Tell us a little bit how curiosity is playing a role in leadership.
Absolutely. I mean, the short gist is if you're not being curious, innovation is probably not happening, because curiosity really is the aspect of being willing to ask questions about even the most mundane and routine thing that is in your routine. And that takes courage. That takes a lot of empathy, because you're trying to understand and relate to another perspective that you might not be familiar with, trying to see it in a different way about things that are very routine. And when we don't have that lens, not only will we not have innovation, but no progress, because we're just staying in the routine of doing things as is. And when was the last time that actually made any progress, right? Especially at this time when we're all needing to reinvent the way we do and think everything. It is so critical. And so curiosity is something that I think we absolutely need, especially from the leadership level, when we feel like we know and think everything. In truth, that's the exact blind spots that we have. And that's where the gap of culture development is. And something that I encourage leaders and coach them on how to think differently, as well as through the culture and leadership development we do.
Great. Thank you. Cultural development, if you can help us a little bit more understand how you really create that culture of curiosity, culture of empathy. Just tell us a little bit more about that. That would be great.
I think culture is another word that has become a bit of a jargon, perhaps. We throw around it and say we need good culture, we have an inclusive culture, we have a diverse culture, we have a creative culture. But if you really take a level from the employee lens, from the leadership lens, when a culture is done right, from the intern to the C-suite, you should be feeling exactly the same way about what your company culture is. And that's the number one aspect that becomes a gap is inconsistency. Because culture is not just a statement. Culture is something that you live and breathe. And so just like how you would know immediately when you walk into a restaurant, oh, I can tell what this restaurant vibe is. Like I walk into a park and I can tell what this park vibe is. That's exactly how we feel when we walk into the office of a company culture. We can tell, is this the environment where I feel like I can chit chat or talk, joke about things, or and be like, be open to learning about new cultures and be myself, or is it feel like I have to be stuffy or hide myself and really wear that identity mask almost, because I don't feel like I can share part of that community, coming across the wrong way. And that is so critical, because without that, what you realize, Nish, is that going back to empathy and curiosity, is that we're not feeling comfortable to be who we are at work. And so when the culture is not inclusive and creative and encouraging curiosity and empathy, a lot of us are showing up with our masks. I mean, when was the last time you actually got a genuine opinion when we're showing up with our masks? Probably not. And so in that kind of setting, it becomes very hard to understand and also really ideate and find new solutions and ideas. And so how we help companies understand this, because it still seems so like theoretical. I think often when I talk about this, it's still like, okay, that sounds great, but like, how is the how piece? The how piece I help them understand is breaking it down into concrete measurable steps, which is like, how is it currently, how are your employees currently feeling when they show up to work? And then backtracking that, because they are signals that you see every single day in your life, especially in the workplace. What kind of communication are they receiving? What kind of validation are they receiving? What kind of measure of progress are they receiving, as well as how do they celebrate success as well as failures? All of those segments we help leaders and companies reframe through the workshops and training we provide by helping them learn by doing, because that's the sense of the change that we get to have, not when we are just told that, oh, this is the theoretical piece and we should think about it. Thinking about it is step one, but if you really want that in action, you have to embed it throughout your whole system and the operation and how you actually do your work. And so, I mean, Nish, going back to curiosity and empathy, those are big words that people take it for granted. It takes a long time for us to actually build that into habitual routines. I mean, think about health. To be healthy, it takes a long time. It's not just, I'm going to go to the gym and 8 hours of exercise and I'll be done. And so if you really want that culture, it's not just doing a one-time workshop, it's really embedding throughout that holistically for that bigger how. And so I wanted to kind of first break that down on that concept to really show why that implementation throughout embedding, and of course walking the talk from senior to lower management consistency is an important segment of that. And then on our part, particularly because we know we humans, we learn best by having fun and also learning by doing. And so a lot of our workshops and approach to the experience building is really built on that. So that way people are learning not because they're told to do, but through that experience and journey. And that's where I think it becomes really enriching on that.
That is so beautiful, and just for our viewers, and I know you know at Rangam our culture. I always talk about the culture and our why. Culture is to empathy driven culture where empathy drives innovation every single day at Rangam. So just a quick thought. I would love to have a more detailed conversation, but any quick like a checklist I can run by within Rangam and say, when we say we are, and you mentioned that, it's empathy is very complex topic and culture makes it even more complex. Any quick checklist, there is no shortcut for anything, but any thought on that I can run by that and say, yes, we are truly in compliance with the definition.
I mean, the short gist is probably there is no one checklist because every culture is different.
Yes.
But I think three measurement statements that I hope would help is that number one, how do you and your employees feel when you show up to work?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's always a really golden statement to think about, because if your gut instinct is excitement, I feel energized, I just cannot wait to be back and see my colleagues, even if I'm on a tired day, I can show up without makeup, like I feel great about it. Like that's probably a safe space. You feeling comfortable, you feeling like you can be your full selves, and that's a good validation. Of course, the opposite is also a good validation to know that you are not in a safe space and you should probably not want to stay there too long, or know how to protect your boundaries so that way you feel safe. And then a second question that I encourage thinking about is like, how comfortable do you feel bringing up a new idea or building on a new idea? Because if you don't feel safe, again, there's no, because psychological safety is a key component to how we ideate, build empathy, or just working well. When I don't feel comfortable sharing a new idea, then that's when that is missing, because we feel that maybe somebody will steal our idea. I know often the reason why we don't like to ideate in the workplace is because somebody might take it for granted, or you're not credited properly, or that you are just ignored. We've all been there. And so we absolutely know when it's like the opposite, when people are appreciated, like, oh, Nish, thank you for that great idea. That actually connects to what Zule was saying, and like what Sam was saying and Susan was saying, and like this connects to our global vision that we want to build. And then everyone organically becomes really excited. And that feeling also is a reflection of a good company culture.
Beautiful.
And really, I would say is the question of like, does this place and culture encourage you to want to keep getting better? Because at the end of the day, we are always an imperfect version of who we are. Like, I hope that like today, the version of me you see today, and then a month from away, I will be a better version, because I constantly strive to be a better person and better individual, and then a better leader. And in a culture setting, the question is like, does this place encourage me? Not competitively, because I think that's a very tricky line. It's not that competitively you want to compete and get better, but you are incentivized to want to get better because it's just so encouraging that excites you, that motivates you. I think when those three questions, you can say yes, 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 that is absolutely a healthy, amazing, creative, and a holistic culture that really encourages you. And you can say that consistently across the hierarchy, then it becomes even more powerful.
Love it, love it, love it. Principle of three, right? One is showing up at work and how you feel, number one. Number two, make them comfortable. If you feel comfortable sharing your idea, number two. Number three is constant improvement. Constant improvement, that hunger to get better and better and better. Beautiful. Thank you so much, Monica. One more question. As you means you have been working with executive coach, talking about building high performance teams. So tell us a little bit about how that is connected and how you are really helping leaders build this high performance teams.
And so, as I mentioned, bulk part of our work is really in leadership and program development. So I do a lot of workshops and trainings. And along that, I do a selective executive coaching and coaching the teams to rethink about how that works. And so the first step, actually, Nish, that I often talk about in that process is reframing actually our perception of a high-performing team. Because when I actually ask leaders and companies, okay, you say you want that result, but tell me in a blank statement what that actually means for you. And what you realize is that the goal of KPI isn't really aligned with a human KPI. It's often connected to, well, of course, we want this product development, or we want to make sure that people generate X number of ideas, or like we want to see how many people show up to this event. I would say yes, and I would be looking up for cues of like how many of your how many different people are feeling comfortable sharing their different ideas. That's an important KPI, right? Like, is it always the same person sharing their ideas? Then that means you're not making it inclusive and open enough for all your stakeholders to feel like they can perform and be themselves. So that's a different KPI I would add to the puzzle. I would also rather be curious to think about how comfortable do you feel of not speaking, and just trust the team to do it. Because often as a leader, and I think, Nish, we're probably guilty of this as well, it's like we have a lot of ideas that we envision that are great and we want the team to execute, but if we do that unconsciously too frequently, guess what the feedback loop we've seen from the employee level? Oh, and Nish and Monica, I mean, they got it figured out, so why am I supposed to think about it? Because they're going to just delegate it again to us. Yeah. So the incentivizing to want to do something different starts decreasing. And so the other KPIs start looking out for is that how much of a space are you as a leader providing to let them step up? I mean, even in romantic relationships, we talk about this, like in a family household or like even among friends, it's like you can't always just be the give and take. And I want you to think about, as a leader, if you really want your team members to grow and be who they are you giving space for them to step up, take responsibility, have ownership? And then this is the third piece that I think is really important. I do like number 3. So they're seeing the consistency, which is 3, for them to feel not only encouraged to step up, but how are you empowering them to have clear ownership? Because it's one thing for, let's say, somebody to say, hey, we have, for instance, in my case, I have a summit coming up. And it's one thing for me to say, okay, that's great marketing plan, go ahead and do it. But am I doing a good enough job actually giving that person the thing that they actually do well and clearing the pathway for them to succeed? Because how dare me to not do that as a leader if I want to be a good leader and really think it out? Because then I'm preparing them for failure, which is not great. And so one of the things I think as leaders, especially at this time, we should think more is like, how are you truly thinking through all of that, which is a lot of thinking. And that's why when I do coach with executives or like help them in that process of building leadership and creative workshops and team building, is that how are we making sure this aligns and not just top down?
Yeah.
That you have the space to process this, because all of this, Nish, as you're probably resonating as well, is that it's a lot of work. It's hard work. This is the very reason why it's very hard to find great leaders. And I want to credit and acknowledge that. And that's the very reason why for leaders as yourself, you absolutely want to build in time to think, process, and pause. Because we can't always just be on the go, 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 go. That's not how results are always provided, because that's when we are just being reactive instead of being proactive. And so those are things that come to mind. And I hope these are helpful reminders for our audience here that they can build space as a leader. And even as an intern right now, if you're thinking that, well, that sounds like only for executives, I'm like, absolutely not. These are all things as a human being that you can build. It's just from the senior level, you have bigger ripple effects and responsibilities in how you can provide that empowerment of ownership. And so those are things I would love to share that I hope.
This is great. It's very helpful. And maybe some other time I would love to talk to you about empathy can be sometimes misinterpreted as compromise in quality or compromise in productivity. So some of those things are very, very, I would say, complex or a little tricky. But once you understand the concept that all us as a leader, if we have that clarity to keep that balance, I think that's the key. So thank you for sharing some of the great vision. And before we conclude, any quick story you would like to share which makes you an amazing trainer and amazing leader?
I think one thing that I want to add is just a statement of, okay, I'm going to do two if that's okay. One, I know you asked for stories, but I might make it more as a statement, because for me, it's really an umbrella that reflects upon all the stories and days I live right now, which is, one, we become what we consume. And then two, how can I change the way I think to change the way how I feel? And these are things that I want to share, because often all the stories and moments, especially right now during this uncertainty and constant change, it is so understandable that we become reactive, that we feel the stress. I feel like every week I get updates from people who say they're unemployed, or that they had to do reorg, or that they're not sure what they're going to work on. And it could feel that the life feels very reactive, like we don't know what we can do. And so those two statements for me set the intention of the days and the stories I want to live, because everything is indeed changing. And so by me intentionally choosing what meetings do I want to show up with, what energy, what media do I want to consume today, who do I want to talk to, who do I want to catch up with, who do I not want to talk to, how do I want to make space for myself, those moments help me reframe the positive energy consumption so that I can stay positive and moderate the negative consumptions that I have that influences my negative thinking. Because science shows that 9 compliments is equal to 1 negative comment. And so if we are just letting our brain process and hear these negativities and discouragement and not giving intentional consumptions of positivity, that's when it becomes an imbalance and being stressed out. And two, as a result, recognizing that, as type A, I'm guilty. I am always thinking through a lot of things. But that's where the gap becomes. And Nish, going back to the reason why empathy is misused is because we're treating the feeling as a wrong thing. But when was the last time you had an innovative idea when you didn't feel safe? It doesn't. And so that reframing your mind so that you can be fully emotionally and intellectually present to recognize these patterns is even more frequent, I think, this time has actually taught us how to do that more, which I am excited to see more leaders wanting to curate that, improve that, and just recognizing that. And so thank you again for having me. And I hope
this is so wonderful. This just reminded me of Dr. Dale Caldwell. He always talks about that we are products of our influence, people whom we are surrounded by. So this is very similar. So thank you again for sharing your wisdom and your thoughts on some of the great work you do with leaders. And I would also thank you, all the audience and everyone who joined today's session. Thank you, and looking forward for the next segment of chat with Nish next Wednesday, same time, same place. We will talk about empathy, employment, and innovation. Stay safe, stay healthy. Thank you, everyone.
thank you.